this meeting to order. Please join us in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Please note for the record that all council members are present.
Okay, adoption of the agenda. Any changes, deletions, or additions?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, I have one. I want to close in memory of Doris Berry, a longtime Brisbane resident who recently passed away. So I want to close in Doris's memory. And so is that included in your motion?
I would make that amendment, yes.
And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have an operating menu, and the first item up is oral communications number 1. This is for
Did
any
we-
item. Whoop.
Report out from closed session.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Terry. City Attorney, report out for closed session, please.
Council had 3 matters on for closed session. One was the public employee performance evaluation, city manager. Mr. Holstein is still sitting next to me, so I assume that went reasonably well. On the conference with legal counsel, no direction or action was taken with respect to that matter. The liability claim from the claimant, AAA, the council did approve that claim unanimously in the amount of $9,400 and some odd dollars.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And with that, we have oral communications number 1 for any item that is not on the agenda. I don't have any slips. Does anybody wish to speak to council on anything not on the agenda? Okay, not having any takers. We're going to go to the consent calendar, which is items A through F. And City Attorney, on item F, I have a note for Councilmember Davis to recuse herself from vote since her mom is one of the committee members. Does she need to do that for the whole thing for that item?
No, she can just be shown as abstaining with respect to the public art matter, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so then we have items A, B, C, and D, which are A, B, and C, which are council minutes of March 13th, 15th, and March 20th. Item D, which is approved task order number 5 for engineering design services for Glen Park Booster Station. Item E, which is adopt ordinance number 625, waiving the second reading to amend the zoning text to eliminate prohibition of cannabis businesses within 600 feet of schools. And then item F. So,
Can I make a motion to approve A, B, C, D, and E? And we can do item F separately.
okay, do we have a second for A through E?
Second.
Okay, a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item F.
Then I'd like to make a motion to approve item F.
Okay, do we have any second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
And
One.
abstention?
Yep.
Okay. All right, 1 abstention. Very good. All right, that brings us to the fun part, how we got to fill the room tonight. So, presentation, which is administering the oath of office for our newly appointed city commissioners and committee members. So, City Clerk Ingrid Padilla will administer the oath for the following newly appointed city commissioners and committee members. We're going to take you one commission and committee at a time instead of having you all come up here because it can get kind of confusing. So we're going to start with the Park and Recreation Commission. So if Bonnie Bulligoff, Lyle Covino, and Natalie Ocampo, please come up.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Lyle Covino,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
to the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and I will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
on which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
All right. Lyle, nice bow tie, man. Can I borrow that? Looks really stylish there. Okay, so with that, we're going to have, I'm going to move to Open Space and Ecology Committee for Meg Ockenbrook and Mary Rogers and Claire Treyes.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Claire Treyes,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California,
That I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Okay, and for Complete Street Safety Committee, we have Forrest Walker.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Forrest Walker,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic,
And that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
California.
Constitution of the State of California,
That I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of change up here. We're going to have the Public Arts Advisory Committee. So Mayor Pro Tem Davis is going to give the oath to her mom and Camille Salmon. No laughing, okay?
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations.
Well, thank you all for your willingness to volunteer for the city, and we're happy to almost completely have our commissions and committees filled. I think we need one more for the open space and ecology, and we'll have that discussion a little bit later on. And thank you very much for your volunteerism. We look forward to serving with you, those who returned and those who are new. Put forth that great effort that you did in your interview. So we rely upon our committees and commissions a lot, and your advice to us. So that certainly makes our job much easier, and staffs also work with staff. And so thank you very much. And if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. And if you want to go home, get up and leave. Thank you so much.
They don't want to stay.
Thank you.
Clark. They don't want to stay.
Oh. Don't you want to stay? No. Okay. Bye, Natalie. All righty. So that brings us to new business, which is discussion about revising the Public Art Advisory Committee guidelines. And this, I think, Madison, you probably have to.
I don't think so.
Michael, does Madison need to recuse herself on this?
Correct. She should step down from the dais and wait till after this matter is completed.
Okay. Why on this particular item?
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke. This is not considering the appointment. This is simply revising the guidelines, so you may participate. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for that clarification. So, staff report, please. Anybody? We have a staff report.
I don't think we actually had a staff report. I think it's just
Yeah, it's up to us.
what's written under the on the agenda. There are currently, I could read that out for the public that's listening on the TV. Currently, there are 2 community members assigned out of 6 of 7 committee members. The guidelines provide Parks and Recreation Commission may have 2 or 3 members. The guidelines could be revised to add an additional community member, or one of 3 members of the Parks and Recreation Commission could be deleted, and a 3rd community member could be added, so that the number of committee members would be 7. I'm not sure how clear that is, but that's what
It's not
we
very.
use the options.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the council then. And so when we first did this, I'll just start off that we had 3 really dynamic candidates for the public participation, and that's why we asked for this to come back. We said, gee, we'd like to have all 3 on there. So what's the council's pleasure here? Why don't we discuss this a little bit and see where you stand? Who wants to go?
So currently we have 7 members. If we go by what we have on the guidelines of 2 to 3. So we have 2 to 3 Park and Recreation Commissioners. And how many Park and Rec Commissioners are on this subcommittee currently?
3.
So when we last met, it was Karen Lentz, Bonnie, and Kevin, but we haven't met since Karen stepped down. So I don't know that maybe somebody has filled to take her spot, but we haven't met with that new person as a subcommittee, correct?
Have they appointed anyone? Oh,
Let's have Kevin come up
You would
and
know.
fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, it was so exciting tonight to see people sworn into this first rendition of a Public Arts Committee. And when we worked on the Public Arts Subcommittee, our role was really to look at and come up with a draft first for the Public Arts Ordinance and then for the implementation guidelines. And our understanding was that the implementation guidelines should be more flexible by nature, because as we get into it and discover how theory maybe doesn't match up so well with practice, we would make some changes as we go along. And I think here we are with the potential of making some changes. Terry, it was your suggestion that we move down from 3 members of Parks and Rec on that committee to 2, and I think that that's actually a fine idea in order to keep the number at 7, which is a good number. I had discussed with Noreen a little bit about this, and in fact, the Public Arts Subcommittee is no longer, there's nothing left for us to do. We have done our job. So on our end, it's quite possible that we just end it. And then we have 2 people from Parks and Rec, which would probably be me and Bonnie, because we are the original members of that committee, assigned to this Public Arts Committee. I think we're fine with that on our end. We have not yet assigned a 3rd person to that Public Arts Subcommittee since Karen left. Teresa was on it briefly, but she's left. But there's really I don't really see any reason for that subcommittee to ever meet again, because all matters of public art moving forward, of public art policy, will be handled by this newly formed committee. So that's my thoughts on that. I would just say one other thing about the implementation guidelines that came up during the interviews, the idea that they call for this subcommittee to meet once a year, and I think actually that's, maybe we might want to meet quite a bit more, at least at the beginning, while we get our bearings. I think this first Public Arts Committee has the opportunity to set precedent for how we will move forward for the next years as funding comes in for public art. So that's my thoughts on this.
So how does it work at the Park and Rec department level for assigning this subcommittee? Because you said that in the past it was the committee to make the ordinance and work on the ordinance.
Right.
And now it's going to be a different subcommittee.
Well, I would say we would just abolish the subcommittee. That subcommittee was originally formed my first time on Parks and Rec when I wanted to explore the idea of a public arts ordinance. And so through my role on that, we as a commission went up to the city council and said, hey, here's an idea we want to explore. Is it all right with you if we form a subcommittee that now goes through the process of exploring this idea, which is what we did all the way through. We spent a long time examining many different cities and how they handled it, all the way through to writing a first draft in collaboration with the city attorney that then came up to you, and so on. Once that was done, then we did the same with the implementation guidelines. But the sole purpose of that was really to examine and then to write the drafts of both the public arts ordinance and then the implementation guidelines. That was our function. We're done, and I don't see any situation where a public arts issue would be discussed in a public arts subcommittee when we now have this broader public arts committee with members from the community, members from city council, and if it's your pleasure, 2 members assigned specifically to that from Parks and Rec. So I think we just that subcommittee has done its job. Mm. That's my view of it. Now we would discuss it at the commission as a whole.
So my question was, the Park and Rec committee has not designated their 2 applicants to this as of yet, or their 3 applicants.
No, and the way that the implementation guidelines were written is that the members of that subcommittee would then serve on the Public Arts Committee. So I'm on that currently, Bonnie's on that currently. If a new person were assigned to that subcommittee, then they would be the 3rd person. For a brief time it was Teresa, then she would be that 3rd person. But that seems to be maybe an extra step that we don't need. If we do away with the subcommittee, then what we would do on our end is to pick 2 members of the commission and assign them for our 2 slots on the.
So it's done at the, so I'm wondering whether we are we are assigning the 2 members of the Park and Rec, or if Park and Rec is
I see.
assigning those 2 members.
I see.
Is my question for
I-
staff, how this is written.
Right.
And
Traditionally,
how
what
it would be, because we're swearing them in. So it's not just a regular subcommittee. We are swearing them into this commission or committee. And so I'm wondering how that would work. If they would also need to be sworn in separately for this committee, just like the other members of that committee.
I think there might be a city attorney question. I don't know, because if you have 2 council members, they wouldn't need to be sworn in again on this, would they? I mean,
That's correct. It seems to me that the two, whoever is from the Park and Recreation Commission would not have to be sworn in as a committee member the same way that a council member would not have to be. To the extent that there are public members who have not otherwise been sworn in, it would be appropriate to have them sworn in as committee members, but the Park and Recreation Commissioners who serve on this committee would not have to be sworn in separately.
Okay, so we don't have guidelines for that needing to be done, was my question. So, thank you. That's it for my questions there. Thank you.
Okay, and your suggestion, Terry, is to eliminate one Park and Rec Commission member from the committee, and then have 3 community members?
Well, I'm glad that there doesn't seem to be a conflict with removing someone who, from Park and Rec, who expects that. And I know that we had 3 great applicants. But that shouldn't be the reason for changing things necessarily to fit the applicants. But I'm happy to do that if that's how we want to move forward. That's okay with me. I would rather keep it at 7 people and not just keep adding people when qualified people apply or
Yeah.
express interest.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
so if we look at page 3, top of page 3, it says Public Art Selection Committee. So for Park and Rec, it's 2 to 3 members of the Parks and Recreation Commission. So if that's the case, then we could have 2, and we're not changing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So and then it says at least 1, but not more than 2, are professional artists. And then we have the 1 community member, 1 business owner. If Dan Carter is the community member, Danette Davis is the business owner, and Camille Salmon is the artist.
I don't think it designates a community member. I think it just designates an artist and a business owner. But I think
It says 1 community member.
I'm wondering if this calls for actually 2 separate committees. The one that we are assigning now, which does not actually choose the art, the one that we are looking at now is the one that
Okay, so
examines.
is this a different?
So I think I can help you here. Go down where it says general procedure and go down to the 4th paragraph. And that will give you the membership of this committee. So it's currently reads that there's 2 to 3 members of the Parks and Recreation Commission. You could reduce that to just say 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down and says 2 members of the community at large chosen by the city council. You could say 3 members of the community at large chosen by the city council.
Okay.
one is
okay.
business
Then we
owner.
could have Danette Davis and Dan Carter be the 2 members of the community at large.
Didn't you
Can I-
pick somebody else too?
Camille Salmon is the
Artist.
professional artist. Then I don't think we're
Well, it says
making
2 members of the city council and 2 members of the community at large.
Yeah.
But one
So
must
now-
be professionally engaged in the art community, and one must be an employee or owner of a business. So if one person is a business owner and one person is the artist, there doesn't leave a space for someone to have a qualification as just an engaged community member. They can't just be an engaged community member. They have to be a community member who either owns a business or works in a business in Brisbane, or a community member that's engaged in art. There's no space for just a great community member. So that's what I was trying to make the distinction, that like we could have a role. There could be one that's related to our business community, one that's related to our community, and then the third spot could just be, an engaged community member. It doesn't. They don't necessarily need to have one of those other two components.
We can just change it to whatever we want.
So we could bring back language to say just that, but I think the key thing is that number two, or instead of being two, it'll be three.
Right.
So this is the public arts implementation guidelines, but this isn't the resolution to create this committee. And I'm confused by the difference between a public art advisory committee and a public art selection committee. Are we having two committees?
The selection committee will be once the Public Arts Advisory Committee says we shall have public art and we are going to have it in this location, and so we are going to advise the City Council to put out an RFP for a mural. Then those things, this is how I understand it anyway, then those things come in, and then it's another committee that actually goes through all of those proposals and makes that selection and recommendation to the City Council.
That seems really cumbersome.
Well, it seems a little bit redundant. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would those people, would the people on the selection committee be made up of all the people on the implementation committee in addition to others, or?
It's very confusing. This is...
Well, part of the reason, and I'm kind of trying to remember those conversations we had a long time ago, part of the reason for that is that in the selection committee, let's fast forward to the Baylands, and now we've got a $1 million public art installation that we have to think about. And at that point, you might want on that selection committee a professional from San Francisco, whose specialty in public art and who knows all the ins and outs of it. So I think the selection committee allows that we could bring someone in from outside who has professional curatorial experience to help us when we get into waters that are that deep. It's not something that we would certainly need for selecting public art installation for the library, for example. That the stakes were fairly small, and we could manage that. So I think that's the intention behind it. And looking at other cities and their implementation guidelines, we sort of pinch that from how other people do it, allowing for the fact that we might at some point need some outside help.
So can we see a copy of the actual, do we have a
Maybe Stuart?
A guidelines or a real,
Stuart,
instead of just...
you have clarification on that, or?
Well, I think part of it is that the committee, when they were working through it, was concerned that if you wanted to make sure that whatever art you were doing was appropriate for the area that you were putting it in, as well as what Kevin was saying. So you wanted to have representatives of that specific community area being there, so you don't end up with things like what you have in the Visitation Valley, where you have art that is not reflective of the community. So that was part of the concern. That was why you had one group looking at the big picture, and then you had another one very specifically working on the small picking of the piece of art. And then once the piece of art was chosen, or once an artist was chosen and a concept was chosen, it would then work its way up through the Parks and Recreation Commission and through the City Council. So that way it had a lot of the ability to be vetted in the public. So one was to say, yes, we do have, I think right now we have about $300,000 available for public art, that the big committee of the council members, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and representatives of business and of the public would make that decision as to say, okay, what is it that we want to have? What kind of art do we want to have in the community? An example might be you want to do murals, and you want to do murals in the industrial park, and we want to spend $100,000 on murals in the industrial park. And then when you get to the point of saying, okay, what mural do we want? We want to make sure that the people who are in the industrial park are represented on that selection committee. So that was part of the reason why there's two separate ones. And I mean, if council wants to change that, that was, we can go back to the guidelines and, make that change if you just don't want to have a single committee.
Well, what did we pass by resolution?
You passed by resolution the two separate committees. One for the overlooking the overall art program, and then one when a particular item was to be picked, that you would have a separate group of people working on that, picking that item, and those people would be part of the business community and part of the community itself to ensure that the businesses who are putting money into the pool of money was they had a representative there, and the people who have to live with it on a day-to-day basis had a representative there.
So we are.
So right now you're picking the overall concept group. The advisory group
Public Art Advisory Committee. But
right.
That's
So
not
this
what
is the advisory committee is the committee that's made up of council members, Parks and Recreation commissioners, and the public, and that group is to determine what the big picture of the art, like how are we going, what kinds of art do we want, how much do we want to put towards it, and then when you get to say, as I said, when you get to a specific idea that we would like to have, but if you don't want to do murals in the industrial park, you want to do a statue down in Sierra Point, and you want to have a signature statue.
Can I make a comment for clarification?
Sure.
I think that we're calling this the Public Art Advisory Committee, correct?
Yes.
Is what we just swore in people for. And then the Public Art Selection Committee, because the guidelines are exactly the same, except for having two more people, whether it be artists or critics, that the Public Art Selection Committee should be made up of the Public Art Advisory Committee with up to the addition of 2 additional members. And we can leave that sort of blank as to what the need is. But it seems redundant because otherwise we need to do a separate Public Art Selection Committee and do this whole thing with 9 more members.
Can I make a comment? I think for the selection committee, the members will inherently rotate, right? So you'll have like the core group of people, which sounds like would be made up of the advisory committee, and then 2 spots would be invited. So the stakeholders in that current situation, they could be, 2 people who live at the Baylands. The next time it comes around, it's not assumed that those 2 people are going to remain on the selection committee because theoretically the art will be in a different place. So to me, it kind of makes sense to just simplify it and have the standing advisory committee and then just leave 2 spots open and people who are stakeholders in that community where the art is going into get invited to participate in that process for that specific piece of art, because I think it's important that the members of the advisory committee and the members of the selection committee are consistent, because you have an overall kind of idea of what you'd like to see in the community, especially if the advisory committee is at a higher level. That's important when you get down to picking the art too. So all of those things are cohesive. So to me, it just kind of makes sense to have just one committee, and each time you're choosing in a different spot, rotate out those 2 members.
I agree.
Your thought?
Well, I not to muddy the waters further, it's important and it's interesting to hear all this, because even as we tried to figure out a good implementation guidelines, it sometimes we felt like we were playing Twister. But it's important to point out that this committee that we have just appointed has another function altogether, and that is the public art ordinance. The public arts ordinance allows for development to choose their own public art. If it's more than $5 million, if there's a big, building built, that developer could say, okay, public art, we've got just the right person, we're going to do this X, Y, and Z. They have to run that past this committee. This committee either approves it or doesn't approve it. So it's important to know that they have this other function. They're really looking at when a developer comes in and says, okay, we're going to spend our public arts number is $100,000. We've got this artist. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to put it in our boardroom. Well, now this advisory committee says, no, you can't put it in the boardroom. Sorry, we reject that. That conversation, as well as the funds that go into the in lieu of fund, which is the current situation we have. We have a little over $300,000 unencumbered in the in lieu of fund, where we can decide where we want public art, and now the city is going to go through an RFP, put something out there, and then this selection committee, whether it's a larger a group as you suggest or not, but it's important to just keep in mind that the function that it's not always going to be that this public arts ordinance is triggered and now there's money in the fund and we get to choose what it is and where it's going to go, because looking down to the Baylands, we could see some big building being built where the developer says, yes, and we're going to have a courtyard and we are going to put this public art into it. Is that okay? And this is the interface with the city and the developer in terms of whether that public art is going to fulfill our mandate. And we struggled a lot with that, looking at how other cities do it, whether we lose total control of what a developer does when they come in and fulfill this. How do we have that conversation with them? So it's important to keep in mind that this committee that we just assigned also has those responsibilities.
I realize that.
Personally, I think that the committee, as it stands, thinking that you and Bonnie will be on it, and who we've just appointed, to me, I think that committee is fully capable of all of these tasks. I think that they can pick a great piece of art. I think that they can collaborate with the developer. I think the committee, as it stands, is fully capable of doing all those things. And I think when it's appropriate and art is going to be put in a place where it makes sense to invite stakeholders, you invite stakeholders at that time.
I agree.
I agree too.
So I would like to change the wording on this, if this is the actual ordinance, which I don't really think it is.
This is implementation guidelines, not the ordinance.
I know, and we're not looking at the ordinance.
Right.
We don't
What
have
you
that in
change
front of
here
us.
has nothing to do with the ordinance.
We're going to, depending on your direction tonight, we will bring back a resolution for you.
Correct. And that's why I would like to sort of see the ordinance, how it's written, because this is
It won't be an ordinance, it'll be a resolution.
resolution to the ordinance. Or the resolution,
Yeah.
the original was
It
the
never was an
resolution.
ordinance.
You're gonna need a towel.
We need a
We
towel.
need a tissue or a towel.
There was no resolution or
Sponge.
Cliff, what's your?
Yeah, you just, there was never an ordinance with this, which
Okay.
I think may have be confusing here, so we'll have a resolution based on your direction tonight.
Okay. What I would like to do
So there's no public arts ordinance? There's not an ordinance.
No, the public arts
Go
ordinance
there,
is for putting money into the fund.
Right.
Okay.
And then what was based on that was was neither a resolution nor an ordinance. It was just a guidelines that could be changed and updated at the city council's discretion. So if city council would, at this point in time, like staff to rewrite it, to have the public art advisory committee also serve as the selection committee with the addition of a member of of 2 members, up to 2 members, one of which may be a different professional in the art community, and one specifically within maybe a quarter of a mile of the location of the art.
Well, I again, if we're going to put it into the guidelines, I think that it should be something that leaves it as malleable as possible for the 2 additional people, whether it be an art expert, the developer's architect, or artist. It could be a multitude of people that come in for a specific piece.
Depending on the project.
Depending on the project, the size of the project, and we would still have that same 7-body group looking over that with up to an additional 2 people.
That
And I
would
think-
certainly give it consistency, which I think is important.
And I think that the people who are looking at it to begin with, saying, we think we should have a mural in the industrial park using public art funds, should be the same people who are the ones saying, well, now let's select the mural, because they're already invested in how it's going. So, but I would want them to be more cohesive, because this doesn't make sense to me when we have the same similar guidelines with an extra 2 people, but it doesn't state that it's the Public Art Advisory Committee that's going to be the Public Art Selection Committee plus.
Cliff, what's your thought on it?
Yeah, I think we're pretty clear. So the only thing is what are we are going to decide for bringing on that extra community member? So we're just going to just say an additional community member at large and leave it at that for the criteria?
I would think so, yeah. And then we aren't limiting ourselves by, it can be an artist, it can be a business owner, but since there's no conflict with current Park and Rec commissioners as far as taking someone off of their wildest heart's desires, I think that that's a good way to go. We keep it at a manageable 7, an odd number, and we can make that decision once we've made that change to appoint one of the applicants as we wish. But we wouldn't do that tonight. We would give direction.
Karen?
Agree with all of that, except the selection committee. What if it was a really big project that we thought, gosh, we need 3 or 4 experts on this particular item? Do we have to say an extra 2 people for the selection committee, or can it just be extra people for the selection committee based on the scope of the work? I mean, what if it's huge?
To answer that, what I would say is I would still have it the 9, because you want to have a definitive number of people that are making this decision. Okay. But I would not tie the hands of the selection committee to bring in a consultant if need be.
Right, consultant.
If the project is huge,
Okay.
where you're going to have someone who's going to be the project manager or the whatever it's going to be needed, that I would think that we would handle it as, at that point, if we were the ones dealing with it, we would need to budget that out of the arts budget to say, yes, we think this project deserves a consultant, and as a council, we think it's worth, paying $20,000 or $50,000 or whatever for a consultant. But I think that would be on an as needed basis.
We're just selecting the art. Then it'll go into the additional,
Yeah.
whatever it needs to take to make it happen.
Oh, of course,
Right.
of course.
So
I'm
I think we're good. Yeah.
So, Kevin, your wheels are turning there? That
Well, no, I just, to Karen's point, our original thinking was precisely what you're talking about, is that in a selection committee, if it's a small thing, but when we get into deep waters and we really want to land something, we have the kind of money to land something really iconic, we may want to put somebody on that panel that has experience in whatever direction we're going in, and that was the original thinking and why there's those split things.
Well, I think the idea of the consultant in those circumstances probably makes a lot of sense.
is that clear as mud, Stuart, to you?
I understand it.
Okay. So you'll come back to us with some draft language, right?
You'll get a resolution on the appointment, and then we'll put on the appointment itself.
Okay, so we don't need to consummate this with the motion tonight, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would have to have the city attorney, really stretch his brain on this one. Okay, so you know what was asked. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
For showing.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, so that was the discussion. So let's move on to staff reports. So city managers report on upcoming activities.
I got a couple of them. I'll go through them quickly. Supervisor David Canepa will be holding District 5 office hours at Madhouse Coffee this Saturday morning, or this Saturday, April 7th, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., and that is open to the public. One more item related to the supervisor. Last week, he awarded Mitch Bull, who is our city's economic development director, and more importantly, the chamber president, as the San Mateo County Supervisor District Number 5 Citizen of the Year Award. And we will
Congratulations.
Oh, well deserved.
And we will be putting information about that out on our website in the next day or so. The third item is you can help nominate a Brisbane park for Meet Me in the Park Earth Month campaign, which kicked off this past week. If we get the most nominations, one of our parks could receive up to $20,000 grant for improvements. The link to vote on this is on our website, brisbanecalifornia.org, and you can vote every day this month, so you can bookmark it and come back and stuff the ballot, if you will. And one last item related to Parks and Recreation: the Club Rec After School registration will open next Tuesday, April 10th at 8 a.m. You can do that either online or come into City Hall in the Parks and Recreation office on the second floor.
Is that a time-sensitive thing? Do we think that is going to book up?
We do.
So have we done substantial outreach to current parents that were in Club Rec, and we know that there's going to be a stampede at the door at 8 a.m.?
Well, we hope there won't be a stampede, but we do know that there will be a lot of interest, and we have been doing the outreach.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, do we have an update to report out on potential expansion of the after-school program at BS?
Oh boy, Noreen was just here. She could probably have given you a good update on that. If you'd like, we could make that at a future meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Mayor, council matters, item A, which is discussion of possible appointment to a vacancy on the Open Space and Ecology Committee for a term through January 2022. And we actually had one of our persons who had interviewed for Planning Commission who had responded, albeit a little bit lately, but was interested in being on the Open Space and Ecology. And right now we have 6 members.
So I was confused on that a little bit. At the last Open Space and Ecology meeting, that one of the members who I thought had resigned and did not ask to be reappointed was still listed on the roster. And I'm confused about how that works.
The vacancy is actually for Michael Abney's position, who's no longer part of the committee.
Okay, but we also had one past member that was listed on
the two previous members whose terms expired did not reapply. And those are the 2 that we filled, and then we still have the vacancy from Michael Abney's.
Okay, but when the Open Space and Ecology Committee met, they were told that Ms. Vladimirova was still on the committee.
My understanding is the vacancy is for Michael Abney's position.
Okay, so has that's been resolved then?
Going forward.
Going forward?
I think that, yeah, going forward.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because they were confused.
I was getting ready to sneeze.
Did I pass it off onto you?
Yeah, thanks. So
I am okay with
Go ahead, Karen.
I'm okay with appointing Ross. I thought he interviewed well, and we've got the vacancy, and he would be a nice balance.
I agree.
The only guy on there.
I agree. I would
Elegy.
recommend moving forward with Ross as well for Open Space and Ecology Committee.
Okay. All right.
Is this a voting issue? Is this something, I mean, is this something we can do this way when it's just in mayor council matters?
It's on your agenda as a discussion of possible appointment to the vacancy, so if there's council support for the appointment,
Okay,
it would be in order to do so.
okay.
So Cliff, I take yours as a motion,
I guess Karen was a motion. I'll be the second.
Madison and Terry didn't say anything.
and, okay.
Yeah, I don't have to say
Somebody
anything.
make a motion.
I'm okay.
All right, somebody make a motion.
I will make a motion to appoint Ross Dykes to
Okay.
the Open Space and Ecology Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Karen, second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good.
Done.
So that brings us to a full contingency of 7 on that committee.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
And so next meeting, we'll bring Ross in and for the oath, hopefully, right? So, okay, City Council Subcommittee reassignments. This is has to do mainly with our 2x2 committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Cliff and Madison are looking at swapping. What for what? Just Cliff, you want to be on 2x2, and Madison, you're going to go off a 2x2. Is that right?
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Fine with me?
Fine with me?
All right. Get her done.
Thanks.
We don't need no motion for that. So, countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. So, who wants to start?
I can start, I guess.
Okay.
Mayor Conway and I had a charter city ad hoc committee, subcommittee meeting, and we talked about the pros and cons of becoming a charter city. We gave some discussion to among ourselves and with the city attorney. He is going to come back with a little bit more information on some of the questions we had and what could be a pro and a con of doing that, and we'll have more information in a couple months down the road. That sort of sum it up?
That about sums it up.
Madison and I had an airport noise group meeting on Monday, and that was attended by our public and working group, and also Kathleen Wentworth from Jackie Spears' office. It was very interesting. Ms. Wentworth is brilliant and explains things very well, and gave us some ideas on how we can address the issues with noise in the FAA and how we can get things done.
Terry, she was an ex-pilot, right?
Yes. But she also talks where you can understand her.
Oh.
And she can also understand some of the plots and graphs and numerous diagrams and data plots that Peter Grace and his group bring to us. So it was really nice to see them interface and actually be able to understand what everybody's doing on the screens while they're doing it. So it really helped bring some clarity to some of the problems and give us a little bit of information to work with on where we want to go from there. Then last night I attended the San Francisco Airport Roundtable working group, noise group. They didn't really have anything monumental to discuss. We did get a draft health effects of noise on humans, but it is just the draft study that was done by a consultant, and they were talking about a lot of the other damages that happen from noise other than just auditory, psychological, blood pressure, health effects, that lack of sleep, how it affects children and learning, and we will be getting a larger report on that back at the end of the year. This was just a draft report. They gave out Fly Quiet Awards for 2016-17 years on what airlines have been performing well and which ones have been best improved. And it was nice to see that all 6 airlines who received awards were there and that they were participatory and were actually sort of glad to be getting these awards for whether it be most improved or flying quiet. But it was nice to see their participation. We'll see if it makes any difference going forward on how they perform. The big winner of the evening was Virgin America, which is merging with Alaska here, I think on the 15th of April is their official merge date. And they were the Chairman's Award for Best Performance. And a lot of that is due to their type of aircraft that they're flying. So that was interesting to see. And I think that is about it for now. Am I missing a subcommittee?
Yes.
Which
That's
one?
okay. We met twice for airplane noise. We met before.
Oh, that's true. We did.
We met previous to the Kathleen Wentworth meeting to discuss what we were going to plan out, what to say. So you had a pre-meeting to that meeting to just
We did.
plan, what our strategy was. But that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a lot of airplane-related
Yes.
meetings.
Okay, Madison?
That was I had the meetings that she talked about, and then
Or 2x2 meeting we
Yeah.
had.
Huh?
We had a 2x2 meeting, you and I, with Jefferson High School.
did we not report on that last time? Oh,
Yeah. I don't think we talked about that, did we? Or did we?
Since your last meeting. Didn't it happen the 22nd?
I checked my calendar, but I think it was before that. But anyway,
I thought it was the 21st or something.
well, maybe.
21st of March.
Okay, yeah, I guess I was thinking the last meeting we had was a Baylands related meeting, so I guess we didn't report out during that meeting. Anyway, would you like me to do the synopsis? You want to do it?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So we met with 2 representatives from Jefferson Union High School District, and then their superintendent, and we had a lot of parents show up for that meeting. Basically, they just kind of gave us an update on what they've been doing to help remedy the bus situation, which has been coordinating with Samtrans and Carol Matsumoto, and just trying to find a way where we can maybe divert an existing route to stop in Brisbane, so that it would be better, could probably have better ridership if it came through Brisbane instead of its existing route. I think that's one from the airport to Terra Nova or something like that. So the meeting went relatively well. It was tense at some points, but I think we all got a better understanding of like what each other's goals were and kind of found a common ground. Is there anything you want to fill in there?
No, just kind of to follow up, because David Canepa's function over at Jefferson High School this last Saturday actually had an informal meeting with Carol Matsumoto and Kalima from the school board, and actually Doug Kemp, who used to work for Samtrans, Doug's the mayor of Belmont, and so we discussed, more on that, and Carol was very positive about, the potential of them, Samtrans, rearranging a bus route. And so I know that they had a meeting this Tuesday, I think it was. Tuesday?
Yeah.
Right? Was it Tuesday? Yeah. And a lot of parents from Brisbane went to that meeting, but, I had a conflicting meeting and couldn't go myself. So I don't think, I've never heard any feedback from the parents on that.
We both sent letters.
Huh?
You and I both sent letters.
Yeah.
So you couldn't be
Yeah,
there.
I sent a letter.
I think Alina did get back to us, and it just the meeting seemed to go well, I think, from her perspective, and that they're continuing to study the options with regards to
Yeah.
a bus route.
I was informed by one of the parents that Jesselyn from the mayor of Daly City is trying to get a town hall together with representatives of Samtrans in Daly City.
Well, Carol Matsumoto is going to host a town hall meeting, I think.
Oh,
on
okay.
that. And so,
It's coming up in May, but I think that, obviously I'm no longer on that subcommittee
Yeah.
anymore, so that would be something for
okay.
Cliff to attend.
Well played.
Pretty good, Madison.
Duty start early.
Well, as of right now, see ya. No comment. All right.
Can I just wanted to point out that on the dais, at the round table last night, their representative, Sue Degree, also handed out a position statement that they've done to the FAA, and I just wanted to point it out to you, and it may be something down the road that we want to follow suit with a position letter, not necessarily this one because it's addressing their specific noise concerns, but I just wanted to point that out. And one thing that I forgot on the meeting is that the FAA just did their new budget. They have appointed a regional noise person for each of the 8 regions in the United States and committed a minimum of $3 million to those positions. So the San Francisco, LA area will have a representative going forward in the new fiscal year. So they are assumedly taking the noise issue seriously.
Finally.
And we will have some FAA person who we will be able to reach out to that's responsible for this region.
Yeah, no, that's great. I read the letter from Pacifica. I think if Brisbane did something similar in collaboration with our community members and Kathleen Wentworth, because Kathleen will provide that grounding, in technical assistance that you would need in order to, I think, get greater acceptance from the FAA. I think is an excellent idea. So I would encourage you to do that.
It is not necessarily anything that will fix anything, but it showed a commitment on the council to take a position on it. And so I just brought it to the attention. I don't want any action on this, just to bring it to our attention and see if that's someplace we wanted to go down the road.
I would say sooner rather than later,
I agree.
given the speed with which the FAA works.
Now I'm done.
Everything.
Okay. Anything else, Madison? Karen?
Cliff, do you want to do on the?
Yeah, you can do it.
Cliff and I met with the ad hoc committee for noise related issues at the Northeast Ridge, and Clay and Ingrid were there, and I think we made some interesting progress relative to how to handle the situation, and leading with talking to the companies who may not know they are creating an issue, and making a friendly approach to see what, if anything, can be done to alleviate some of the problems for some of the people up on the ridge. Is that good enough?
It was, yeah. And I think, the people that were there was at least 10, 11,
Yeah, it was really
12
well attended.
people. It was well attended, and I think they felt really
Listened to.
happy to be listened to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have anything else?
I have a different thing, but...
Well, I just wanted to say that this is sort of related, not really. There's the CERTs met last night with Amy, who's working on the CERT Resurrection program, I'm going to call it, just for the heck. And it's really great to see that we actually have some staff time now to really do outreach to our community to get our CERT program up and running again.
Yeah, the other thing that I attended was the CCAG's working group committee on providing guidance for performance indicators and implementation guidelines for the transportation plan. So, just trying to make the transportation plan more accountable and showing how the things that CCAG spends money on in regards to transportation, how we're moving the dial to make transportation more efficient. Again, is really being more accountable. So, so that was it. But hopefully, within the next month and a half to 2 months, we will have some recommendations for the entire CCAG board.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. And Clay and I guess, are doing a television segment tomorrow with Mark Simon down at Samtrans building. I guess it's going to be broadcast on community channels. Just a segment about different cities, what cities do, and we're probably going to be focused more on Baylands. So, wish Clay luck.
Who's the on-air personality
Yeah.
going to be? Which one of you is the on-air personality?
Both of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Good luck.
Yeah.
As mayor, I always take the opportunity to call in sick. Okay, city council meeting schedule.
Reminder that we will do the meeting on May 3rd will be a closed session only. There won't be a public meeting that night. We'll have one business meeting in May, and that'll be May 17th. Also on May 17th, we will have a closed session item relative to the Rennie Public Law Group that provides city attorney services for us. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
And other than that, the meeting schedule is as we've been discussing in the last several meetings.
Okay, any council questions on that? Yeah, it looks good. All right, so written communications, I only have one, and that's from Ross Dykes, stating that he just received the email. And we just appointed him to Open Space and Ecology Committee.
Didn't we have a written communications from Linda Detmer?
That was Baylands related.
That was today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
This is non-Baylands.
it'll be on the next meeting. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it goes through yesterday. So, let's see. That brings us to oral communications number 2. And anybody wish to speak to the council or anything? Not seeing any takers.
I'd like to make a motion to close in memory of Doris Berry.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Close in memory of a longtime resident, Doris Berry. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much.